the PowerPoints, so I'm going to just let you look at this one because I do lecture more from the book. So through legislation such as the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970, a wide understanding of the meaning of a safe and healthy workplace has been developed, and it is now part of the contemporary professional nursing culture. However, there's still the recognized potential from some nurses to work in unhealthy work environments. And, sometimes it's more in the area that we live, of wide variety of geographical locations, but there are a lot of factors that contribute to an unhealthy work environment, which we will discuss a little bit later. But what are factors that contribute to unhealthy work environments? Incivility. That is one, just incivility. Terms such as discourteous, impoliteness, being rude, ungracious can define workplace incivility. So, those are just some things that can happen, terms that do take place in the workplace. And the outcome of a work environment that has a culture of incivility includes the impact on the targets and the witnesses to this behavior. The organization that condones this behavior runs the risk of increased costs because of staff attrition or increased sick leave because of staff experiencing psychological distress and anxiety. Bullying and mobbing. There's not a universally accepted definition for workplace bullying. Some of the other terms they use for workplace bullying are horizontal violence or lateral violence. But does that occur in the workplace? Yes, it does. Bullying, though, can, however, begin with behaviors that the target may not even know are occurring. Sometimes bullying behavior can start covertly, which may progress to the bullying a person, but rarely in front of other people. Incivility and bullying behaviors are reported as a cause for burnout in nursing, job dissatisfaction, and attrition. Bullying upward is also known as mobbing, and that occurs when a group becomes obstructive to a colleague at the same level. However, mobbing behavior is more closely associated with a group who targets an individual at a senior level. Another thing that we have to watch out for now in today's social media is cyberbullying, because this behavior provides another avenue to target nurses. There are a lot of similarities between face-to-face and cyberbullying, such as spreading rumors, but both forms of bullying can be just as damaging to the targeted person. Another another factor that can contribute to unhealthy work environments is stress. Stress can cause a lot of problems, and stress is defined as a condition or feeling experienced when a person perceives that demands exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize. And is there violence in nursing? Yes, there is. Over the years, it's often been difficult concept to grasp, in part because of people's misunderstanding what the term violence implies, as well as the language used to describe this behavior. The language issues often derive from a reluctance to expand the meaning of violence to more than a physical act. Because people consider violence, when they consider violence, they often ignore the non-physical aspects such as the emotional, financial, and psychological harm that are experienced by many people who are abused. So on page 172, 173, there's a lot of different little boxes, box 12-1 through 12-5. But another, on page 172, just under the discussion point, another reason it's difficult to distinguish workplace violence altogether is because what one person considers a harmful experience may not be every person's experience with or perception about violence. Such perceptions are unique to that person. And studies show that violence against female nurses is greater than against male nurses. However, the question of whether violence against male nurses is an outcome of the same forces identified in studies into violence against female nurses is open to further research. So in box 12.1, typology of violence in nursing, there is nurse-to-nurse violence, which includes nursing students, horizontal violence, lateral violence. There is external perpetrators, strangers, criminal intent, and there are third-party violence, other healthcare professionals, family members, and significant others, as well as other healthcare workers. Box 12.2, types of nonviolence involving nurses. Setting up someone for failure, embarrassing someone, spreading rumors, improperly taking credit, stalking, being uncivil, exhibiting rudeness, impoliteness, or silence, or condoning inappropriate behavior by being uncooperative or unsupportive. Box 12.3, types of violence involving nurses, predominantly by patients, families, and visitors. You have the non-physical, which is verbal, for example, swearing, yelling, shouting, making threats, calling names. Non-verbal is invading your personal space, threatening gestures, constant eye contact. And then you have physical, hitting, punching, kicking, pinching, scratching, and spitting. And physical can also lead to homicide. Box 12.4, potential factors leading to patient-nurse violence. Negative attitude of staff towards patients. That is one of the potential factors leading to patient-nurse violence. And predicting patient-nurse violence in box 12.5. Does the patient indicate a heightened level of anxiety or depression? Are they continually moving around? Do they have a repetitive speech pattern? So, what can we do to protect ourselves? We can have an alarm or monitoring system that requires periodic check-in. We can have the GPS location turned on our cell phones at all times. There may be some aspects of a policy that would be the same wherever you may work. For example, stay calm and don't panic. If you're unable to remove yourself from the situation, attempt to diffuse the situation. And remember, on page 174, they can use many different types. They can use furniture as weapons. They can use syringes, sprays. There's a lot of things laying around in a hospital. The telephones on the cords, they can, start swinging those and hit somebody with them. So there's a lot of different or potential weapons that can hurt someone. But how do we create a healthy work environment? We need to ensure civility. Civility is an integral part of a successful healthcare work environment. Civility is not only the way we speak, but also how we behave towards each other. And to maintain or achieve a culture of civility requires strong leadership at senior management level. Management should not condone any form of incivility and must lead by example. So organizational change starts with management. And it is important to remember that it is a nurse's human right to work in a safe and healthy environment. Establish anti-bullying cultures. Organizations also have to develop an anti-bullying culture. Sometimes there's a principle of a just culture. And, that one has been revisited in the contemporary scholarly literature within the context of the healthcare system. And applying the principles of a just culture to minimize disruptive behaviors such as workplace bullying may be one solution. It is well recognized that nurses are often reluctant to report bullying behavior because they are concerned about the consequences if they do. And promote stress-free work environments. We can some departments within organizations may be more stressful than other departments for both staff and patients. Organizations should aim to have a healthy, stress-free work environment, or at least to minimize the stress factors. However, it may not be possible to have a stress-free workplace in healthcare. How do we respond to mental health problems related to workplace violence and incivility? They can have common mental health disorders, such as PTSD. They can have feelings of social isolation, helplessness, panic attacks, anxiety. And we have to remember taking care of oneself emotionally is essential before post-traumatic stress symptoms impede the nurse's ability to perform. There is a high probability during our nursing career that we may work with other nurses who have been diagnosed with a mental illness because of being bullied. Why is creating a healthy work environment so difficult in nursing? We need to make changes though. It needs to be a cultural change through change management. But you got to think about it too. Do nurses want to see the change? Are they ready for it? Are they prepared to take on that leadership role to put that change in place? An effective change happens when an organization and individuals in the organization are ready, competency-wise, for change. So, if there is to be a cultural change in attitude and understanding of violence in nursing, these changes should be strongly supported by the organization. And if that is not happening, nurses may feel they are not adequately prepared, not only to address violence in nursing, but also not able to engage with other organizational issues and directives. So, we need to make those changes because bullying does happen in nursing. There are a lot of things that go left unsaid because it's like, oh, that's just that person, or that's just the way they are. But nurses have to be able to step up, build resilience and feel empowered to make changes in their organization. and that is Chapter 12, Promoting a Healthy Work Environment. Chapter 16 is on whistleblowing in nursing. On page 231, internal whistleblowing typically involves reporting concerns up the chain of command within an organization in the hope that whatever the problem is, it will be resolved. Where external whistleblowing involves reporting concerns outside the organization, and in particular to the media. In many cases, whistleblowing becomes external only if inadequate action is taken at the organizational level to address the concerns of the whistleblower. However, whistleblowing does become external in an effort to embarrass an organization publicly or to seek financial redress. Group thinking and whistleblowing. Being a whistleblower takes a lot of courage and self-conviction because it requires a whistleblower to avoid groupthink, which is the inappropriate conformity to group norms. So, the thing of it is with whistleblowing, many organizations are aware of problem situations, but they choose to ignore them until a crisis occurs or the problem becomes public. And, the reality is, though, many professionals are torn between what they believe they should do and what they actually do. I mean, I would like you to read page 233, 233 to 234 of certain examples of whistleblowing that has occurred in nursing. But because they are very interesting, how they view, the whistleblower, and how sometimes it's more the whistleblower that is at a loss of losing their job, or legal retaliation, or just from being treated as traitors from your colleagues. But remember, with whistleblowing, it's important to remember that whistleblowing should never be considered the first solution, but only if your patients' lives are not at stake. In those cases, I said that wrong. Like I said, it's important to remember that whistleblowing should never be considered the first solution to ethically troubling behavior. It should be considered only after other prescribed avenues of solving problems have been attempted. And this is true, however, only if the patient's lives are not at stake. If you have patients' lives at stake, immediate action must be taken. Cultural background and whistleblowing. Nurses with certain cultural backgrounds may be more reluctant to blow the whistle because they've been raised to respect a clear chain of command and hierarchy. The same goes for nurses whose first language is not English because they fear problems related to their communication. What are the personal risks of whistleblowing? Negative reactions from coworkers, losing one's job, and in the extreme, legal retaliation. Because some of the studies they've done, whistleblowers are reported as being treated as traitors. And many nurse whistleblowers were not prepared for the impact on their personal, emotional, physical, and professional welfare. On page 235 and 236 is a story of a whistleblower here from Oregon. and it dealt with the Healthy Kids program, and she completed an audit. So read through that. It is very interesting. You know, but the thing what we have to remember is potential whistleblowers should determine their legal duty for reporting and carefully research the specifics of their protection under the law. Ethical dimensions of whistleblowing on 237. You know, nurses must remember their primary professional responsibility is to their patients, not their employers. You know, justice and fidelity are other ethical principles that must be examined when considering the ethics of whistleblowing. And the ANA Code of Ethics for nurses with interpretive statements may also provide guidance for nurses who are considering becoming a whistleblower. And that section 3.5 states, when incompetent, unethical, illegal, or impaired practice is not corrected and continues to jeopardize patient well-being and safety, nurses must report the problem to appropriate external authorities such as practice committees or professional organizations, licensing boards, and regulatory or quality assurance agencies. Some situations are sufficiently egregious as to warrant the notification and involvement of all groups and or law enforcement. However, there is no universal legal protection for whistleblowers. There is no universal legal protection for whistleblowers. You know, they do have the False Claim Act, which originally was a Civil War statute, which encourages whistleblowers to come forward regarding fraud committed against the federal government. And the individual would file a qui tam or whistleblower lawsuit and provide knowledge that the person defrauded the government. These lawsuits are brought by a citizen known as a relator or whistleblower against a company, person, or entity that he or she believes is cheating the federal or state government in some way. However, to have a case brought to trial under federal law, the whistleblower must first exhaust his or her external chain of command and then file a complaint with the Department of Health and Human Services. That is on page 238, right side. It is the second paragraph down. On page 239, other federal legislation related to whistleblowing. The Whistleblower Protection Act of 1989 protects federal employees who disclose government fraud, abuse, and waste. And the Paul Revere Freedom to Warn Act protects federal employees, whistleblowers who speak out about abuse, harassment, and unethical behavior in the workplace. The National Labor Relations Act might protect employees in the private sector from retaliation when employees act as a group to modify working conditions or ask for better wages. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. This act dramatically redesigned federal regulation of public company corporate governance and reporting obligations and provided some protection for whistleblowers who report fraud in publicly traded companies to the proper authorities. But the reality is that whistleblowing offers no guarantee that the situation will change or the problem will improve, and the literature is replete with horror stories regarding negative consequences endured by whistleblowers. That is the end of chapter 16. Just to remember, midterms are next week. in ethics, and your midterm is going to be over chapters 3, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12, 16, 19, and 23. Make sure you review your study guide. Complete your study guide. If you have any questions regarding the study guide, please contact me via email. You guys have a great week, and I will see you all next Monday in Nursing 405.